always does what it's supposed to do until you start videotaping, and then it fails to do what you notice. You can't see that. There's a very, very small movement of that tile. So I am in the Philippines, and what I have seen in other countries, that's Jamaica, Dominican Republic, Southeast Asia, India, and places like that. I haven't been to India yet, but I'm just saying, as a rule, people are setting tile on concrete. They don't have like the type of construction that we have. We don't have wood flooring here. There's no wood subfloor or anything like that. There's no backerboard because there's no reason that things need support. The concrete's supposed to support your tile. I'm gonna see if I can put my camera way down here. So, see that? Very, very slight movement, but movement nevertheless. And that's not what I noticed when I first came in here. What I noticed is that some of this tile on this floor had this noise, this sand type noise. And I can't replicate it now, of course, because I'm on video. I think it was over here. Somewhere over here. Anyway, what I've come to find out, there's a different method. Oh, there it is. There's a different method to installing tile in other parts of the world on the concrete. Basically what they do, and I've seen it done a couple of ways. Sometimes they screed out some thin set first onto the concrete floor, and then they put some mortar down on top of that. And they don't really pack it that really hard. And then they set the tile directly on that. On rare occasions, I've seen them back butter the tile, but for the most part, I'm going to say 9 out of the 10 videos that I watch how they do this, they're just literally setting the tile onto the wet mortar, which is different. We wait for our mortar to dry. If we have to screed, if we have to build up the floor or whatever, then we're going to build that floor with the mortar, and then it dries overnight, and we pack it down solid and all that stuff, and then of course, you know, back butter our tile, screed out our thin set and back butter our tile and set it down. But the way they typically do it, and I'm going to show a video on that I just looked up setting tile in the Philippines, and I'm going to show a video on exactly how I've seen it done time and time and again, which is how they did it here. So this is one of the videos that I found on how they do it here in Southeast Asia. This distance that he's measuring there is a distance of mortar that he has to take up to get the floor level. With my history in Jamaica, I can tell you 100% when they poured that concrete slab, it is not level. So typically what they'll do is what they're doing here. They're just going to mark right there. That's the distance that they have to pour the mortar. And they're going to do it probably on all 4 corners of all the walls, starting from a straight line. And that straight line that you saw at the top, he probably put a level on that straight line and knew that distance that he had to go down to, as I said, all 4 corners. Once that's done, then he can mix up the mortar, start screeding it out, and getting it to where he has a flat floor to begin with. And I think the entrances of these buildings are kind of in a way fashioned out to take up for this distance, because there's going to be a bigger thickness at the entrance of all the rooms and the front door and all that stuff. So he's obviously spritzing water, and this looks like thin set that he's putting down here. So I think this is just a sample he's showing, but it's a very slurry type of mix of thin set that he's going to put on this entire floor, which is going to hold onto the mortar that he's going to put down later. So there's your thin set, your wet thin set slurry mix. And I don't know how he's going to manage to step on all that stuff in order to sling the mortar on top of it, but we shall see. There it is. So the mortar is mixed outside, and this is very typical. When I first saw this in Jamaica, I'm like, genius. Like they literally mix the mortar from hand, right, from scratch. So they have the sand and the cement, and they're mixing the sand and cement together on whatever their parts. It's usually 4 parts to 1 on the sand and cement. But they basically build like, for lack of a better term, like a little volcano type of area, and they pour the water into the middle with a dam, that being the unmixed mortar around it, and then they just pour it from. They mix it up from there. They're not using a wheelbarrow the way we would do. But yeah, I would let him talk on this, but he's talking Tagalog, and nobody, including myself, is going to be able to understand that. So that's why I'm kind of doing my little thing. This is where they're soaking the tile, and where I said that they don't back butter. Well, they back butter the tile, but they don't set any thin set on top of the mortar. So there's only one way at adhesion rather than the 2 that we're used to. Yeah, so soaking that tile, and I'm going to get back to that tile because that's kind of an important thing to know, although had it been porcelain, it would have been the same. This is ceramic tile that he's using, which is, I think, one of the reasons why he soaked it well, because ceramic tile is very, very, very porous, and it will just suck up all that moisture of the thin set. And this is what we have is, again, thin set and mortar set on top of the thin set. Interesting thing, though, is they're not really packing this mortar down. You're going to see it when they start leveling it out. And those strings that you see are shot from all of those points which he marked earlier. So those pencil marks that he marked on the wall about an inch or so up, they just went ahead and nailed in a nail and then attached a string to that. So they're using their string basically as their screed. Well, they're using a screed board here, but they're screeding it off to exactly where the string is at, so they know the entire floor. And the screeds are quite long, obviously, 8-foot, 5-foot screeds. And this is the interesting part. So he's starting with one tile, but what's interesting to me is that there's no thin set. So he's basically troweling out thin set onto the tile, but not onto the mortar. And you see how many pits that mortar has, yeah? All those pits are hollow points, in my opinion. Arguably, if there was enough thin set on the back of that tile and pushed down into those hollow points, then it would have kind of a solid surface. But in this case, it doesn't. You see clearly that mortar is not packed down very well. When I say very well, it's not packed down the way that you would have, that you would be confident in knowing that you have a very solid base. Put it like that. And then, of course, as I said before, screeding out the thin set and troweling it. But they're not, although they're doing directional troweling, it's a little antiquated type of thing that he has there doing that. And so again, the thin set is directly onto the mortar base itself, and the mortar base is wet and the thin set is wet, so they mesh very, very well. I'm not saying it's good, bad, or indifferent. I'm just saying it's not what we would do. I'll put it like that. And then, of course, tamping it down with his rubber mallet in order to get it level. So getting back to this tile, you see that brown, that's clay. So this is not even a good tile. This is a rectified tile. And I'm going to show that a little bit later because it has little rounded edges instead of being straight on the edges. This is what I would, well, it's garbage tile basically. It is not in any way, shape, or form a tile that you could use in order to get your lines completely straight without using some type of leveling system. And oddly enough, he's going to use a leveling system on this, although I'm not really seeing staggered tile. This is a 2 foot, I think it's a 2 foot by 2 foot tile. And they're not staggering here. I'm not seeing that at all. They do it direct. Running bond is what we call it. And I'm not seeing a level on here, which is odd. I watched the whole video earlier. This is a snippet. This is actually, even though it's quite long, it's about 12 minutes long almost. It's just a snippet of this entire 30-minute video. So again, I'm not seeing, the stagger on any of these tile. I'm not seeing this ceramic tile. If you look closely, you see the rounded edges right where he's pointing at. You see the rounded edges? This is not a rectified tile. So undoubtedly, the reason that he's using the leveling clips on this particular instance is that he's not going to get any kind of flush, no lippage type of situation going on. In contrast to that, I'm not seeing leveling clips used in other places, although they are becoming more prevalent in other places. I'm not seeing them because typically, and even the hotel I'm at, it's definitely a rectified tile. And rectified tile is a little bit more forgiving than this garbage ceramic that he's using. There's a couple of things that I found interesting on this video too, that he has a couple of techniques that I also integrate into doing the tile myself, and I'm going to show that in a minute. Again, wetting down the concrete surface and screeding out some thin set on top of that wetness, and then putting the mortar on top of it. And he's got his string. You see his string is from front to back. So then he can screed out his mortar, and you're not seeing him pack it down. That's the thing. I think that's the Achilles heel of this system. If he started packing it down, he would use a lot more mortar, and it would be a little bit more difficult to screed off the surface to get it level. That's my take on it. But it works. However they make it work, it works. And so my take on it also is that this mortar is probably a lot more rich than what we use. Typically 4-to-1. They might be using 3-to-1 or 2-to-1 for all I know, meaning one part of cement and 2 parts of sand, or 3 parts of sand. And so that's possibly why they don't have to pack it down, because it becomes more solid. And look at that cut to the left around the doorway. That's just really, really good. Considering that in a lot of places, he has an angle grinder you're going to see later on, but a lot of places they're doing this with a cutter, a manual cutter. So yeah, this is quite a large area. You see the indentation, whatever that black thing is in front of the screen, at the bottom of the screen there. See that indentation with the with the concrete pad? Concrete is not poured well here at all. Or in a lot of places, and that's the reason for the buildup in the mortar. See how thick it is right where that tile is at. The mortar thickness in order to get everything level, and again following that screed string is what I'm going to call it. That you can clearly see the roundness of the edges of these tile, which again is why I don't like them. But a couple of tricks that he uses, I think it's going to be on next, is back cutting or back measuring in order to cut a straight line. And I usually use it on a shower. Look how big this room is. Keep that in mind. Put a bookmark there. Look how big this room is and the turns and corners that he has to deal with, right? Because this is the part that I'm getting to. This is 170 pieces of 40 by 40 ceramic tile at 50 pesos each. So it's 56-to-1 currently. So this is roughly about 90 cents a tile, right? And so he's doing the breakdown on the math here on what a room this size would, well, obviously what this room cost him to do. So he's breaking down the math for exactly how much. And so it's 8,500 peso for that tile. It's 175 peso for the trim pieces. Well, one trim piece, I guess, 175 peso. Tile grout is 100 peso, which is pretty cheap. That's like $2, less than $2. Tile adhesive cement, 4 pieces, 4 packs for 1,000 peso, 1,040 peso, which is about $20, more or less about $20, about $19. Cement, 7 pieces, $1,400. That's about $22, $23. Here's the back cutting. So what I do is I typically turn my tile upside down on a shower wall, turn it upside down, and then I back mark it, right? I mark it from the back and then transfer that mark to the front, just like he's doing. I love it. I love it. One load of sand mini dump truck, 1,300 peso. That's about roughly about $21, $22. So if he marks it right there, which he's going to do at the front, that's going to measure up perfectly to the back when he sets it. So in other words, it'll be the wall that cut is going to set up against. So that's kind of fun to know. And here's the interesting thing, right? You saw how big that room was. Labor costs total for all the work that they're putting in, which could be a day's work, it might be a couple of days' work to do this floor, but it's a lot of work. You saw how much mortar that they had to put down and mix up, and all the prep work involved. I mean, including the tile. So the labor cost was 4,500 peso, $80.
Yeah, so anyway, on that video, it almost, how would I say it? I'm not going to say it's wrong, because many tile are set down in that fashion here that last for a long time. And, you know, there's no lippage and all that stuff. And the tile here is much better than we get in the US. Almost all of it is going to be rectified tile, which is how they can get these really thin 1/16 spacing. You're really fortunate to get 1/16 spacing with leveling clips, because leveling clips, even if they say 1/16, it bumps it out and you end up with 1/8. I don't know that a lot of times they use leveling clips. On that video they did, but typically I'm not seeing that a whole lot, although they're probably doing it more. One of the things that I noticed was there's hollow points in this tile, and I could probably find that in any of the type of tile that's done here, but obviously this one, because you know, you could see the movement on it. In fact, I can move it with my finger right now. So this one is definitely on its way to being popped up. So there's going to be hollow there, solid, hollow. And anywhere I go on here, I'm going to be able to find the discrepancy of solid and hollow. Solid, hollow. 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 Solid. Hollow. Solid. Hollow. Solid. So my belief is a couple of things. One, they don't screed out their thin set and back butter and make it nice and solid. Two, they don't really pack down the mortar, and the mortar has a lot of voids in it. That's my take on it. How long it takes for these tile to pop up, I don't know, because I don't know how old this hotel is. But without a doubt, you know, these tile will start popping up. I'm sure if they were smaller tile rather than large format, they would have popped up by now. But because these are, I think they're 24, yeah, because these are 24 by 24, it could be that 50 or 70% of the tile is set good, and then the other 30 or 20% is set bad. So it might take some time, but it's inevitable that it's going to pop up. Another thing about this chipping, when you get tile that expands and contracts on the edges here, it generally, especially when it's expanding, will chip when you get them really tight. And I have seen that, not a whole lot here, but I definitely have seen it. So I'm not saying it's good, bad, or indifferent or whatever. I'm just saying it's a different way and different methods around the world that people do things. So there's no one right way, to put it like that. There's no MTCNA here, because that's the North America way of doing things, right? And they're probably not adhering to all that stuff. You know, they've just passed this knowledge down from generation to generation. And you can go on YouTube and watch all the videos from India and Southeast Asia and all that stuff. They're very good workers, very solid. I like their work. I just question some of their methods with their work, you know, i.e. this. But anyway, just want to come on camera and talk about that. it's just kind of fascinating to me because, you know, every time tile guys go into a restaurant, if we go into a mall, we go into a hotel room, you know, we're always not necessarily criticizing, but we're just observing and in this case, you know, showing and kind of putting out there some of the information that you may not have any knowledge of. But yeah, I'm out. Hey, if you enjoyed that video and you learned something, consider being a Patreon member. $5, $10, $15 a month would help me greatly produce more videos. I make nothing from YouTube at all. If you're gonna call me for advice, please donate $50 for 30 minutes. My link to my PayPal and my Patreon account is down below. And if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button and hit the bell so you get immediate notifications